In that same year, the Civil War hero who had so admired Wild Bill would also meet his end. America's rapid expansion westward had caused repeated upheavals among Native American tribes. The tribes of the Southeast were moved to Indian Territory above Texas in present-day Oklahoma. The Sioux leaders had been forced to cede most of the Minnesota Territory in 1851. The influx of settlers resulted in fewer bison, elk, and other wild game. In August 1862, when the federal government was repeatedly late in its treaty payments, and his people were facing starvation, Chief Little Crow led the Sioux in an uprising in Minnesota. Over the next 5 weeks, the Sioux fought against settlers, militia, and the federal army. Hundreds of settlers and soldiers were killed, and over 100 Sioux. 1,500 Sioux were captured by U.S. Colonel Henry Sibley. Hundreds faced military trials, and 300 Sioux were sentenced to death for murder and rape. President Abraham Lincoln reviewed the individual case records, separating out those who had killed soldiers as part of their war with the U.S. from those who had killed or raped civilians. He commuted the sentence for all but 38 who were hung together on December 26, 1862, in what was still the largest mass execution in U.S. history. But other conflicts continued. Sioux wars in Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana. In 1868, the U.S. signed the Fort Laramie Treaty, guaranteeing that the Black Hills of South Dakota would be forever protected for the exclusive use by the Cheyenne and Sioux. But then in 1874, gold was found in the Black Hills. Miners rushed into Dakota lands. The federal government proved unable to keep prospectors and settlers out. Larger gold deposits were found in Deadwood Gulch, leading to the birth of the town where Wild Bill Hickok would be murdered in 1876, just months after the town was founded. Then, also in 1876, the Great Sioux War. Chiefs Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull were angered by the betrayal of their treaty rights and refused to surrender the land of their people. More than 10,000 Native Americans camped along the Little Bighorn River in the spring of 1876. On June 25th, Custer's 7th Cavalry found the camp. He led his 600 or 700 men forward. As word spread of the army's approach, Crazy Horse gathered thousands of Sioux warriors. Custer and his men were overwhelmed. Nearly 300 were killed, including Custer himself. 24 soldiers would be awarded the Medal of Honor for actions that day. Hickok and Custer were heroes of the West. Regardless of the accuracy of the stories told of Hickok's deeds, or of the decisions Custer made at the Battle of Little Bighorn, these men were already famous, and their deaths were felt in the East as well as the West. But their deaths also highlighted the dangers that still existed in the wild lands that the federal government was trying to tame. Dangers that would be faced by the lawmen of the West.
Wyatt Earp is one of the few men I personally knew in the West in the early days, whom I regarded as absolutely destitute of fear.
I was in the OK Corral at 2:30 p.m. when I saw the two Clantons and the two McLowrys in an earnest conversation across the street in Dunbar's Corral. I went up the street and notified Sheriff Behan and told him it was my opinion they meant trouble, and it was his duty as sheriff to go and disarm them. I told him they had gone to the West End Corral. I then went and saw Marshal Virgil Earp and notified him to the same effect. I then met Billy Allen, and we walked through the OK Corral, about 50 yards behind the sheriff. On reaching Fremont Street, I saw Virgil Earp, Wyatt Earp, Morgan Earp, and Doc Holliday in the center of the street, all armed. Johnny Behan had just left the Cowboys after having a conversation with them. I heard Virg Earp say, "Give up your arms, or throw up your arms." There was some reply made by Frank Lowry, when firing became general, over 30 shots being fired.
Among the most notable of Arizona's many exponents of the gospel of violence unto all men were the Earps, who early placed Tombstone on the map as well, deserving its cheerless appellation.
Of all the gunfights of the Old West, probably none is more famous than the gunfight at the OK Corral. Leaving aside the fact that the fight wasn't actually in the corral, this incident was so quickly wrapped in legend, myth, and outright lies that the truth is still difficult to find. Were the Earps really the unblemished heroes of dime novels and old movies? Or were they thugs who happened to wear badges? Were their adversaries truly dangerous criminals? Or were they just personal enemies, killed as part of a power struggle in an Arizona boomtown? The answers, as usual, are more complicated than the myths. But without question, Wyatt Earp and his brothers, Virgil and Morgan, were among the most legendary lawmen of the West.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.